My father's dying. I flew down here for this meeting. It's important, but it's not nearly as important as me getting out of here and going and spending the last however long with my father. So you have 2 hours. Let's nail this.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was funny, and I didn't have anything to hide, but those things are like, and as I've gotten older, I'm trying to right now grow out of that doer and into more of maybe a mover or a leader.
Man, do I got a treat for you guys today. I got an incredible man on the show today. Honored to have here. I was going to say in the studio, but the studio is actually yours. You actually own the studio. And so it's just amazing to finally have you on the show because I've been watching you for a while and I met you through Tony. You own multiple companies. You're the CEO of New Venture Escrow. You have a tech company, massive real estate portfolio. But I think what really made me admire you the most was you had a post on social media not too long ago. And I just began to see more and more the type of man you are, the drive you have. And I think there's a unique anointing and gift on some leaders when they elevate the belief system of everyone around them. And you have that. And I took the risk, guys. I DM'd him and asked if he'd come on the podcast. He said yes. So Casey, man, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I will say that the travel and the commute was super easy. Since I work in the building, it was
elevator.
Just come right down and I take the stairs. I try to stay as active as possible. If I'm in an office, I'm moving around a little bit. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, dude, we're gonna have a ton of fun. So I had asked you before we started recording, like, in this season of your life, like, is there anything right now that you feel called to speak into? So I'm going to ask you that again, like, Casey, right now in this season of life, what you're going through, what you're learning. I know so many times people bring on podcast, hey man, tell your story, the NFL stuff, the businesses you've built and all that. We can get into that. But right now, what are you going through? What are you learning? What are you reflecting on? What can you share now?
It's a great question. And when we were talking off air, I paused because I wanted to think about it, because as an entrepreneur with someone who has typically several different things, that kind of balls that they're juggling at any given time, I wanted to make sure I was answering it appropriately and maybe not just was within the last 30 minutes, but what's like the last 30 days to 6 months. And it's maybe my growth and trying to understand what are next steps for me is in leadership and what that leadership looks like in a practical, meaningful way to the businesses or to the prior way in which I've led. Because as I grew up and I was an entrepreneur almost from day one, the maybe focus was in production. I wanted to do, I guess at a young age, you're trying to prove yourself to yourself, to other people.
Right.
And as I've gotten older, I'm trying to right now grow out of that doer and into more of maybe a mover or a leader, to where I'm not the, even the most important person in the business, which I'm not for sure at this point. But the more that I can remove myself and have people really grow and drive the business, make decisions and give them some guardrails so they're protected and the business is protected in the short term, but then become less and less important. And it's a double-edged sword, because you're like, God, I want to be important. You want to feel needed. You want to feel like you're moving in a direction to where people look to you for answers. And the more that you step away, they start to run on their own, which is great. It's just, like I said, for me, very unique and different, trying to take a step back, but also have the business continue to grow. I want to be important, but I don't want to be a focal point, like those types of things. So to your question, it's a great question, because it's like, I don't have it figured out. I'm just in the middle of it. And I'm trying to figure out what's appropriate for me and what's appropriate for the business. What's the right way in which to manage or decide some of those things.
Yeah, dude, that's powerful. And what I heard you say was that drive, that doer in you got you to where you're at.
Yeah.
And now you have vision for where you want to go, where you want to take your business, even your own life, right? How you want to live life right now in this season of life. Probably a lot different than a decade ago.
Yeah.
You were just hustling. But now a decade later, you probably have more things you want to do. We even talked about the travel, and it's probably very uncomfortable being the leader of doing in the company, leading the pack from that way to now transitioning into, how do I position key players, build them as leaders, systems, processes, put bumpers around them so they don't crash the dang thing into the ground, but start removing myself. And That's not easy to do. That's a true transition of leadership. Like, I think even though you're a CEO and you've built massive companies and all of these things, until you can fully remove yourself from the business and that thing thrives without you, like, that's that ultimate pinnacle level of leadership, right?
Well, one of the things, there's two things with that. One, the first thing that comes to mind is confidence, and I want to come back to that. But the second thing is I was getting involved in decisions I didn't really need to be in. So when you're young, you want to make every decision because everything is so pivotal to the business. And you think you have all the answers. You're just this young, you got the bravado, and you're just like, okay, it's going to be my way. We're going to do it this way. We can't make any wrong decisions. And the older I've gotten, I just was involved in too many decisions, too much in stuff that I wasn't necessarily going to be the best at making those decisions. So the more that I've kind of taken a step back and looked at the landscape, I've decided that, okay, look, you got to have confidence in the people that are working with you. They can do a lot of things. Give them the autonomy to do that. Give them the resources to do that. And then the last part is the confidence to do it. And I was blessed as a kid to have parents that were so encouraging, and they were so focused on building me and my confidence. And that has translated into me being able to do things that, you know, maybe what they call it, like outkicking your coverage, or doing things that are supersede my talents. And just like that, I got lucky because I was blessed with a really good family, and they did a lot of things to build confidence. And so what I've tried to do in my leadership is do the same with people that work with me, is build their confidence up. Is that people lack some of that core confidence in themselves. They don't believe enough. And it takes a real effort to find people doing things right, acknowledge it, focus on it, have them continue to understand what's good, bad, and what they can. And like, a lot of people I see don't really understand that their talents far supersede what their production is. And they just believe that they're confined by these glass ceilings. And I just think that there's a duty and a responsibility for me, particularly as a leader, to help people get past some of those barriers and roadblocks. And that's fun to me, is to see people that continue to build and grow, that when they first start, that was not where they thought they would end up.
Right.
I love that.
Dude, that's so good. And I don't know, I just had this thought come up. Do you think the confidence comes first, or the result? Meaning, do you have to have the confidence in yourself and your ability first to create results you never thought you could create? Or do you need to create results that then build confidence?
It can go both ways. Okay. There are certain things where you don't have to run a 4-minute mile, but if you start, running laps at a minute, or, just like you bite off small victories that create this level of confidence. And then you have somebody that can acknowledge victories, not just, results, because a lot of this stuff is process driven.
Yeah.
If people get too focused on just a result, there are outside factors that come into results, and confidence is built from within. And it's somebody extracting that confidence within and finding, even if the result isn't there, you can extract positives from a loss, or you can extract positives from not hitting a result. And so, and this is part of like my growth, is understanding that results are important. You have to perform in business. You just do. And no matter what I could sit here and say today, as far as, effort and energy and enthusiasm, and that's going to equal results, well, it's going to be a big factor in it. At some level, you have to produce. You've got to generate revenue to have a company in business for the most part. But I do think confidence can be gained in some of those processes, some of those small victories, taking a big goal, breaking it down into small goals, and then just having somebody that can celebrate with you throughout the process to instill some of the core things that you're doing that are going to equal those results down the road.
Dude, that's so good. So how are you doing that now? As a CEO, as a business owner, what is a tangible thing? Like, what are some things you're doing right now to do that for your team?
Yeah, great question. It's celebrating success, right? And what most people see in success is, I brought in X amount of revenue, right? And so I'm going to just have some of that fall backwards and say, what led up to that revenue, right? Like, if that's what your result is, there are certain things, what we call key performance indicators, that are going to equal the revenue. I'm going to go celebrate those. Like, as an example, somebody gets a new contract on a new deal from a new agent. like I'm going up and I'm high-fiving that person. I'm saying, hey, great job, right? Or they made a phone call that addressed a customer service issue and they handled it the right way. That's a great call. While people would maybe mad that they got a bad review, but they addressed it, they called, they get better from it. Like those are things where if you just walk around and finding really good things that people are doing, celebrate successes, it creates a culture around, I want to continue to do the things. You're rewarding the behaviors, again, are going to equal results down the road. And people start to get confidence. They start to feel like you're in a safe place, you're in a safe space. And that's the type of culture and energy that I want. I don't want to just talk about it, right? I'm always like cautious when I listen to people talk. I'm like, okay, well, what are your results? Because I only want to listen to people that have produced, but also I don't want to be one of those too that's just like a big talker. And so I want to walk around the office. I want people to be like, that guy is positive, he's optimistic, he's encouraging. I feel safe, and I feel like I want to be here for the long haul, and I want to take this journey with him, because people have a choice. We're at 3.7% unemployment. They have a choice of where they work. Like, I want people to stay here with me and take the journey with me, because they feel like their life is enhanced, and they feel like their core confidence and their overall world is better by spending a portion of it with me here at New Venture.
That's so good. And do you feel like culture, because that's culture you're creating, do you feel like culture is more important than compensation when it comes to employee retention as a CEO?
Yeah, it's super important. So I do believe there is a level of compensation that has to be met, right? A threshold that people have to be comfortable in their day-to-day life, right? I don't know what someone's debt structure is, and I don't know a lot of things that happen outside the walls of our company. So if those needs are being met, I think that a lion's share of why people will stay is based upon culture. And I think it does start with me. I just think that that's the as a CEO, it's something that you have to be. I don't want to say respectful. You have to acknowledge that that's a big part of what you're driving. But yeah, I do think that people stay. I think people come for compensation a lot of times.
Yeah, that pulls them in, right? What am I going to make? But they stay.
I actually think that's a short-sighted way to look at what job you pick, because it is hard. It's hard to say, like, culture-wise, I'm only going to get little snapshots. They're only going to tell me the best. So I get all of that. You can do some research. It's still hard to find. Compensation is part of it, and it's a big part of it. But when someone's picking a job, and I talk about this in a lot of recruiting, who are you going to be working with? What circle of 5, 10, 20 people are you going to be around on a daily basis? Not just for the culture perspective. What am I going to learn?
Yeah.
What are they going to teach me outside of just the job and the core competencies that it's going to take for me from 9 to 5? What other people and opportunities are they going to present to me? Like, we have core people in my business that I've taken them on a journey of investment, education, like tax savings. Like, we're not just talking about, hey, come work for me for 8 to 5. Come experience this journey.
They've been in proximity to you, and it's elevated so much more of
that's
their
the
life.
goal, right? Like, and that's just something that, like, that's a journey that we go on together. So I'm very passionate about the people that directly report to me. And I am very passionate about trying to show them through our interactions on how I want the direct reports that report to them, how I want those relations to look like and feel like.
Because that's that next level, right?
Yes.
You have your leaders that report to you and how you pour into them in that culture, and then training them to create that same thing with the people that report to them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's where you start to really truly build culture that is not me. Right. And
that supersedes you.
Exactly.
It goes even beyond you.
Exactly.
You create something bigger.
Yeah,
and people are like, yeah, Casey's great, but like, I just love working with the people I work with. I love what I do every day, the clients I get to work with.
Well, at scale, they're not going to be working with me anymore, right? Like, as you build and grow, you want to
hang out with the CEO all day. You got to like who you're around.
Yeah. So that's the whole point of building up the culture and starting. It doesn't, like, the responsibility started with me, but our culture is so much better and unique and developed because of the people that we've been able to bring in, retain, and then continue to just manifest that down. And now I think we have a pretty unique thing going where people do enjoy, or hopefully they do. At least they tell me they do. But yeah. I think for me, like, I worked at a previous company, sorry to interrupt, but I worked at a previous company in escrow, and I ended up like thinking to myself, it's awful here. People dislike their jobs, their lives, their workload, their compensation. They dislike the people that are next door to them. And I said, I will never work in this type of culture and environment again. And I was a CEO. I bought the company and very quickly realized, like, wow, what did I just walk into? You would walk in the door and you could feel the difference in like a positive environment. And if you've ever been around either a negative relationship, negative culture, or a negative vibe, you can sense it. I mean, if you have any type of self-awareness, you're like, wow, this is not what I want. And I used to make jokes. I'm like, I would rather sell shoes at Nordstrom and enjoy what I'm doing versus make more money and be miserable. And then because that translates and carries over and bleeds into my personal life. And I just didn't want, that was not the life for me. So I ended up getting out.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting as you say that, and you were talking earlier about like when you look at a job, don't just look at the compensation. You know, I live my life now, didn't always have this mindset about getting in proximity to that which I desire most. Yeah. And in the journey of our life of growing as a human being, and each of us in our own journey, we have to position ourselves in proximity to that which we desire most. And the culture of America right now is very 9-to-5 driven. But while you're at that 9-to-5, you're spending most of your time in proximity to people. So whenever I would go get a job or a career as a young man, before I was fully able to launch my own companies, I would look at the leader. I would look at the Casey LeBlanc and be like, what is this guy like? What's his mindset? How is he building? What's the culture he's creating? I would even take less pay back then. If you were somebody I wanted to be in proximity to and a competitor offered me more money, I would choose less pay because I understood the value of the skill set, the mindset, the proximity to you, and the doors that could even open for my life as a young man. But people don't think that way.
I do this program where at my old college, I take specific athletes that have an interest in being an entrepreneur, and I talk to them about this. They're 20, 21, 22. We've had several of them down here, and they get a week to 2 weeks with me in a shadow program.
Oh, really?
And
that's cool.
They just follow me around, right? And so I fly them down, room and board, and then they get 10 days in just shadowing, training, and I throw them in a bunch of different uncomfortable situations, and I try to talk to them because I don't think anyone in college is really talking to them like this. Is the idea of what you just talked about is who are you going to be around and what are you going to be learning and what type of opportunities are going to be created from that, that first job. And the difference between 65,000 and 75,000 may seem like a lot in the short term, but I promise you the 65 with the right opportunity and the right people will yield much greater than $10,000 a year to you long term.
Exponential.
It's seems simple, and I guess it's easy to say that as someone who's older talking to a 20-year-old, and I don't know whether or not they're going to ever, it's just more of like okay, he said it. Is that going to actually be applicable when they get to the table and there's two offers? I don't know, but for the right person, hopefully it resonates because it's not the only thing. The compensation is part of it, but not the only part.
Well, you planted a seed. It's kind of up to them to water that seed.
True, which is, again, the entrepreneurial journey, right? Like if you want to be an entrepreneur, nobody's going to walk you through exactly how it's going to go. You have to take some risk. And in the beginning, it's going to be a huge risk. But also in the beginning, especially at that age, the risk is if you screw it up, who cares, right? Like,
and you know what? Maybe they take the higher comp. They're young and doesn't go as well as they thought. They hate the environment. Then they think about the conversation they had with you.
Right.
And they're like, man, I should have listened to him. Who do I want to be around? And they go take a lesser paying opportunity that then leads to that. You could tell them, hey, the stove's hot. Don't touch it. But some of us just need to touch the stove at least once.
Right. Yeah. And that's going to happen for sure.
Yeah, that's so good. I was, I was in South Carolina from 16 to 22, raised by a single mom. And I was working for this company, A Backyard Creation, doing like custom underground saltwater pools and plumbing and irrigation and like just building beautiful dream home backyards. Cool. And there was this guy who owned the Computer Warehouse of North Carolina. That was like his company. And they were one of the biggest suppliers on the East Coast for like Lenovo computers for businesses like this and stuff, like big ones. And he had founded the company and started it. And I met him on this job and I asked questions. Like I found out like this guy's done amazing things. I see the home we're building. Like, how do I get where you're at in life? And I'm young and I'm asking him questions. And then I asked, can I buy you lunch? And he let me buy him lunch. And in the conversation of that, he shared this principle. It's like hit me right now. So much so that he tells me this principle of like, get around people at your age that you can learn from. Don't go chase money. Don't this and that. He's like, build your skill set, build your mindset, build relationships. So we get done with this lunch and I'm like, so what do I got to do to get around you more? So he hires me at $10 an hour. I'm making 15 at the other company to come do odd jobs around this dream home they just set up. There's a lot of stuff to be done. And we had an agreement that once a week, I got to have lunch with him, one-on-one for an hour. And I come and work. I do whatever he wanted, whatever his wife wanted. I got paid $10 an hour. I had to drive an hour just to get there, an hour home. Wow. Had to do it outside of my other job, but I got lunch 1 hour a week. Did about 3 months with these guys, and I learned so much. And just one lesson that stuck with me.
That's cool.
Was he actually told me in business, don't go try to create some new thing right away. That he became very successful because he looked at who's already winning and how do I do it better. And his whole success was predicated on he knew he wasn't going to have the next $1 billion idea. He's not a Zuckerberg. But he looked at what was going on and said, what do I love? What am I passionate about? What's already driving the economic engine? What's profitable? And how can I do it better? And that was a good lesson I took.
I love that story. It is really similar to my story. I didn't recreate escrow. I tried to build and enhance it. Got into it, figured out that it was an industry that needed some innovation and needed a little bit of youth and vigor and enthusiasm around it. And I was like, I could do that all day long, and transformed what now is my company based upon that. And I love that advice. I love also what you just did, or what you did at a young age, because that takes a lot of sacrifice to do that. And I would imagine, I guess the question goes back to how worth it was it?
I would do it a million times over.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. That's awesome.
I don't know why, but as you said that about escrow, like you made escrow sexy again. That popped in my mind.
That actually was our tagline when we first started. We're going to make escrow sexy.
Really?
Yeah, because you just would never put escrow and sexy. I just had to be careful with it because escort sounds like escrow. And escort and sexy. I was like, I don't know.
Careful with the SEO on that one.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that.
The FBI.
Yeah, exactly. That was what we kept talking about, though, is we're going to make escrow sexy. Not again. It's never been sexy, so we're just going to make escrow sexy.
We're going to go in. I'm going to do this thing better. All right, so I got to know a little bit of that journey, man. So I know you went to college, you played some ball, you did some things, but dude, what led you to owning escrow companies? Like, why? You just kind of hit a little bit, right? I see this thing and I think I can make it better, but how'd you get into this? How did you climb the ladder of owning your own company?
When I first started, I worked for in the lending space in 2001. I was going to college. I was finishing up college, and then I would take classes from 7 in the morning till 11, and then I'd start work at 12, and I'd finish about 8:30. And I started to understand what lending was about. And I started working for somebody. Very, very quickly realized that they weren't taking any of the maybe suggestions that I had. And not to say I knew how to do things, but there were just things at the ground level, kind of boots on the ground, that I was like, hey, if we could do this, I could do this, and there were no resources, there was not a two-way communication. It was very much dictatorship. And I had come from a sporting background where it was a, multi-year captain. I was like, leadership was my thing. That was like one of the things I'd kind of used as my strength. And so to just be shut down at every single turn, I just realized, like, man, this working for someone is not going to be for me. So my journey started by myself, and then adding a couple of people more. And it was just bootstrapped the whole way through. And then in the lending space, realized that escrow was a big part of, it was something that I could direct. So it was a secondary industry and business secondary business within the same industry.
Right.
And if I could generate enough business here, I could make, ancillary income here. And then, so I just started making cold calls, trying to buy a business, didn't know anything about buying a business. Nobody would take, no cold calls or emails would get it. And so my first acquisition in escrow was, I said, why is no one taking my calls? Why does no one want to sell? And so what I did was I pivoted and I started calling all these escrow companies that weren't responding or telling me no. And I said, hey, I've got a really big account and I want to generate a bunch of business for you. I wasn't lying. So then they started taking lunches with me because they thought I was a potential big client. I was, but I wanted to just basically make introductions so I could sit down and figure out what were the potential buttons that I could push to get them to sell.
Yeah.
So that was how I got into it, was, basically like trying to figure out, and that's basically been my journey, is you can read a lot of books, go to a lot of conferences, and you have some basis of knowledge, But for me, I'm a doer. I'm a try, do, fail, pivot, and at some point, hopefully you start to see some results or success. I think the one thing with me, and this is just personal preference, is that I realized at a younger age, I wanted to be Tony Gwynn and not Barry Bonds. And I saw a lot of people that came in and they're like, I want to hit home runs. I want to start a tech company and be a unicorn. Like, that's what's sexy and cool. And I was like, man, I want a 300 average. I want a 350 average. I want to hit singles and doubles. I want to get really good at seeing what pitch is coming in and then hitting it really hard. And that at a young age for me created some confidence, some smaller victories. And that helped, build confidence over time. And I could learn, I could see like, what is a company at one person versus 10 people versus 50 and then 100 and growing. Those are different businesses. And for me to try to say my experience and expertise and knowledge as a solopreneur could not have run 100-person company in a short amount of time. I didn't have the knowledge, the skills, or even probably the ability at that point. And so that's how my journey started really slow, and it's been a slow evolution, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was listening to Hormozy. I don't know if you ever listen to Alex Hormozy's stuff, and he had one talking about the biggest mistake people make in business is their pride gets in the way of like taking a plate off, like in the weight room.
Right.
You're working out with some guys bigger than you. He's talking about like they got 3 plates on there. I can't lift 3 plates, right? But I might still go to try. I might hurt myself versus just having that pride check of humility of, no, I need to take a plate off,
right?
To do what I can do right now. And I think in business, what I've seen, and you've been in the game a while, right? And you've seen this whole thing evolve with the internet and content and social media, and everybody's an entrepreneur and everybody's coming in the game talking big, like I can put 3 plates on, I can run. No, you can't. Right. You got to start with where you're at. You got to add some weight as you go and build to that. And that's what you did. So I wanted to hit on that because I think that's really cool. And even a good reminder to me in my journey, Casey, is like, I need to know what weight I can put on the bar right now. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like I can be next to you working out and be like, dude, that's amazing what you're lifting, man. 100 employees, let's go. One day I will be. But right now, I'm going to lift what I can lift.
Yeah.
I got 7 employees. And that took a lot to get from nothing, solopreneur, failed business, starting another, then another, to now the team I have now. So yeah, I just thought that was powerful.
It's also just to add to what you're saying and to offer a little bit of retrospect in my journey was going from 0 to 10 can be much harder than going from 10 to 100. So as you think about, well, I'm not at 100. First of all, there's a lot of 10 people companies that are more profitable than the 100. And I saw a lot of people, and possibly myself included, where in the 2004 to 2008, they were like, oh, well, I'm a $20 million company. I'm a $100 million company. They talk about top line revenue, right? Well, a lot of those companies, they went under, they folded, they bankrupt. And, profit pays. And so you could have $1 million company with $300,000 in profit. That's a 30% margin, right? Yeah. That's really good. You can have a $10 million company with a $300,000 profit. Like, there's a lot of people that would rather have the million with a 30% margin than the 10 million with a lot of the people and the problems and the compliance and it's just a lot of minutia that goes along with the $10 million company. So
that's good.
Perspective is important, and scaling at the level that you're comfortable with. People have outgrown themselves and gone out of business, right? They just can't keep up with certain things and cash and managing certain, their talent and the opportunity have to match. And I'm not saying that, I'm saying that from past experience, but I'm also saying that is something that I consider right now, because economies ebb and flow. There's really good economies. You got to press on the gas. It's like playing poker. You got to know when to play your hand. You got to know how to play your hand. The cards are the cards. The economy's the economy. And it's just kind of how you move around in the situation. You read people, you read the situations, and when you have the hand, you go for it.
You go all in.
You go all in. That's right.
That's some good wisdom right there. Yeah, because everybody talks top line. You're right, but what's your net?
Yeah, nobody says like, "Hey, I got a $300,000 net." It's like too much. Like everybody's happy to tell you it's a $10 million company, right? But if you're like losing money on a $10 million company, like that's not that cool.
And there are a lot.
Tons of
Man, there's a lot of companies that do millions and millions and millions of dollars.
There was a video I just watched the other day, and I was shocked. A lot of companies that, the WeWorks of the world, a lot of these billion-dollar unicorns that raised a ton of money, they're upside down. They're kicked off the stock exchange. These are like people have made massive amounts of wealth and lost massive amounts of money, and we think a certain thing, right? When somebody says, "Oh, I have $100 million company,"
we immediately put them on this pedestal.
Immediately, like, wow, they walk on water. Wow, I can only imagine. But it's not always the case. And a lot of times, especially in economies or challenging markets like this, a lot of them are struggling. There's a lot of people that are $100 million companies that don't know where to go, don't know
so
how to
navigate. You started escrow company and went through the '08 crash?
Yes.
So what was that like?
Well, in 2006, I bought my first escrow company. In 2008, the market crashed. And for a window of time, you're like, what? Can you cuss on this show? What can I do? I'll refrain, but what am I going to do? And you have this like look in the mirror moment of you can't control the industry. There are certain things that you lean on in business, and especially in escrow. And if those things aren't there, then what do? We pivoted quickly into relationships with banks, and they were short selling. And so we were taking the escrows from banks versus agents. And that was an entrepreneurial move to make sure we could figure out where business was coming from. And that was, luckily, I had enough experience. So there was a couple of years of being a CEO and seeing smaller, market movements. But without that, who knows? And so there's some level of luck. There's some level of entrepreneurial, you see the thing and then you got to make a decision. You get lucky and make the right call. There's some level of skill and talent to it. And so, that's why they don't teach a lot of entrepreneurial stuff in college, because there's a feel to some of it that you can't teach.
Can't quantify it in a textbook necessarily.
Yeah.
Well, you seem to have this ability of learning, pivoting fast. Like you seem to have that, even what you've shared with me and watch you, like you seem to be pretty good at that. Maybe that's just that sixth sense that some people have it, some people don't. From your own experience though, what has helped you learn to pivot how you have? Because like I have this philosophy, and I think I said this to you the other day too, like if you stay in the game long enough, it's inevitable you're going to win. Like the economy, business, right? This is what we're on. We're on this, and you want to short these close to the line as much as you can. But if you stay in it, you will win. If you, even right now, what's going on, right? If you stay through what's going on with everything in the world, eventually it's going to go up.
Right.
But in the process of staying in it, there are pivots that are necessary to keep you in the game. How have you done that so well?
Man, great question. I have never been someone who jumps around, right? Like I it's one of my faults in relationships. I stick in a relationship, even if it's bad, or if it's not maybe optimal, because I'm like, I just want to stay in it. I think it can improve. I think it can get better. I think I can get better. I think I can change. I think other people can change. And that's not necessarily right. But in a job and a career, I'd lock in. Like it's almost like blinders are on. It's like there is no other option. And as a leader and entrepreneur, I want people to know I'm not looking around for some other opportunity. We will get through this. We will be better on the other side of this.
Yeah.
And so it's also reps, like going through different markets and different good times and bad times, and understanding things as you grow and get older, and recognize, like looking back the last 20 years, what are those markets? What did you do? What did you do well?
Right.
There is a level of like, look back and say, okay, did that well. Next time I'm going to do this. Like we're in a down market right now, significantly down. In the way that I say down, transaction volume for us is really important. We want to see people buying and selling homes, and people are pretty locked into their home, right? 3% rate, 2% rate. They're not going to a 6 or a 7. And that arbitrage is causing people to just pause. The economy, the political scene, the world in general, people are just like, I'm going to take a deep breath here. I'm just going to be okay with what I have. Well, in the escrow world, that's not good. No. It's funny you said 2008. Right now, we're going through a market that's more difficult than 2008.
Wow.
It's not in the general population or marketing or news. It's not worse because values are still high. So the consumer is not impacted, but service industry for real estate and agents, we're going through transaction volume, a significant down somewhere near 40-50%.
Wow.
From, what it was 2 years ago. And that's really impactful. So for me, it's keeping people focused, keeping people positive, building systems. I just had a meeting this morning, and one of the really cool things that I was able to convey to the team was everyone here has taken a hit, right? They're all, high level commission people, a base plus commission, but their commissions are significantly down. We're transaction volumes down 40%. Right. But I will tell you, the one saving percentage grace number that we have to focus on is our market capture. We were at about 8% of the market back in the heyday. Well, today we're at 12. So we're up 50% in market share. And while you guys are all, taking a hit, I'm taking a hit, we're all taking a hit. We're all in this together. We've grown 50% market share. So when transaction volume goes up, we all ride this incredible wave together. Our systems are better. Our people are better trained. Our the way in which we go get to market and get business, we're all going to be better. We all just have to lock arms and get through it. And so, I think, like, how do you do that? Well, a lot of it is practice. A lot of it is going through different markets. A lot of it is like committing, right? I think a lot of people today don't commit. I think a lot of people are just like, something went wrong, I'm out.
Economy's down.
And that goes business, relationship, a lot of stuff like that. Something isn't perfect, I'm out. And that was just never going to be what my career was going to be. I've literally either been in a job or a company for 10 years, and the only way that I got out was through sale. Really? I sold it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's so good, man. And on that, because you just ended with sale, I was wondering earlier, as you talked about how you want to look to acquire and get an acquisition, why'd you acquire an escrow company instead of start one?
Well, there's a decision that some people have to make. And for me, when I was acquiring versus starting, it was having some of the knowledge, expertise, and setup. It would take a year to build all of that. And so depending upon the deal structure, cost.
Right.
And by the way, on that, there's a million ways to structure a deal or cost and stuff like that. And so I was creative enough, or at least asked enough questions to get to a deal where it made more sense to acquire than to start.
Because you acquired the SOPs, the infrastructure, the brand, people.
Yeah. So you could immediately start making revenue, and depend upon how you structure the cash up front versus some of the equity versus some of the blue sky. There's, like I said, this was all stuff I had zero idea. I had read no books. I knew nothing. This was purely in the people business of trying to figure something out, and then just saying, you know what, whether I got the perfect deal or not was less important. It was finding the right way to get a deal done quickly and make sure that I did my due diligence, had a really good attorney and CPA to set things up. But it was like, I'm in the business of doing deals, and I want to do this deal. And as long as my trusted advisors say it's a good deal and the economics of the deal made sense, I was at the point in my life where I was like, let's do it.
Let's go. And now you were a loan officer.
I was running a wholesale lender at the time. And so we probably had 250 loan officers at the time, and we were retailing and then wholesaling the mortgages onto Wall Street. And so we had a pretty large operation from LA down to the border. And then from there we were, driving 500 to, 700 deals a month. And we wanted to capitalize on the escrow side of it. And as soon as we did, we started building and growing that business. But that was the one where the culture was terrible. And that, as the culture was magnified in those tough times, right? It's like rich people. Like, if you're poor and you become rich, it's going to magnify whatever that type of person that you are.
Right.
Right. Same thing with culture, right? If you go into a slow down economy, that culture, the true core of those people, you're going to find out really quickly how good or bad it is. And that's just, one of those things that you hope that it can withstand, an environment or a market that's going to be volatile sometimes.
Yeah. And that was 2006. And since then you've gone on. So when did New Venture Escrow start?
So actually this month, this is January, in a couple of days, we'll celebrate our 13th year
Wow.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thanks.
13 years in business ain't easy.
No, it's not. It's been a great journey. We've got a ton of great people. As such, every year I like to go to all of our offices, shake hands, and talk to everybody one-on-one, and not necessarily in a meeting one-on-one, but go sit down with them, see how their families are, talk to them, tell them what's going on, what I'm doing, what they're doing, just get in front of everybody. And, just, I want them to feel and understand the energy and enthusiasm that I'm bringing, whether they see me or not. I want them to know this isn't some act. This is like it's go time. It's optimism. It's positivity every single day. And I want people to just understand and feel that.
That's so good. Yeah. And then kind of back on that with the positivity, how you found going through this market, transactions down 40, 50%. Hey, let's focus on the positive and let's double and triple down on that thing. And I think that's so important. Like, I just think that most people throw in the towel too soon. Like going through what you're going through right now, chaos creates opportunity.
Yeah, it really does.
Right?
Yep.
Like, and you've lived this longer than me, and I've seen this in my short time, but I actually would say right now is the greatest opportunity in business, even in your industry. Now it's tough for you. You're the captain of the ship. So like all the responsibility falls on you, and you have to mantle the implication of being a leader for this huge organization, all these people, their families, their incomes, all of that. But at the same time, every other ship is going through the same turbulence. Same waves are hitting their boat, man.
That's right.
And a lot of those people are like, screw this.
Yep. I'm
getting off this boat. And so I think as some encouragement too, and this, but it's good to hear sometimes from someone else. Being a CEO is a lonely journey. Chaos creates opportunity.
It does create opportunity sometimes in the darkness of being alone and feeling the heavy responsibility of not just the people that work for you, but what it represents for their families, their lives, their health and well-being. It does at times feel it does heavy, right? Like it just feels like a big, heavy burden. You are kind of managing it on your own because no one really understands. And I don't mean that from like some sympathetic way, like woe is me. I just feel like that's the reality. And there are times that feel dark and heavy, and it's a lot to process, and everyone has their journey on how they handle that. But in those moments, remembering that there is someone else dealing with it in the same industry and space, and your ability to bounce back, to rebound, to get out of it, to minimize those downtimes is a real difference maker. I have the opportunity to co-host a podcast, and we've had maybe 20 really famous guests on, and they have all the thread amongst all of them is that they don't remember or even want to talk about their high success. Right? Like that just doesn't motivate them.
Yeah.
You know what motivates them is when they hit their low and how they rebounded out of that, how they, said that is not going to happen to me again. They get passionate about it. They start talking louder. They get emotional, excited. And that is a driving force. Like fear can be a driving force. And to have, and witness some of those conversations and then think about my own life and what motivates and drives me, and what are some of those moments that have been pivotal in my life. I don't look back and like those high success moments are not the ones that I talk about, right? It's like the moments where you're in the dark room, you don't feel good, you don't know if you can do it. You have imposter syndrome. You're like, how am I a CEO? People were relying on me. Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Like getting out of that mindset and actually springboarding into something where you're like, dust yourself off. Nobody's going to feel bad for you. It's time to go. This is the time. This is the moment. Right? Like it's so easy to cheerlead when teams are winning. It's so easy when revenue's coming in, people are coming in, life is good. You are defined in leadership, in life, in a lot of what we do through those bad, dark times. And it's not hard. It's not easy. Like no matter what we say or talk about or what you read or, hear from people, when you get in those moments, it is difficult. And that's really where you will see that no matter what happens, that is a critical moment in your life, and how you respond is going to be a big part of your future.
That's so good. Yeah, it's the pain, man, and how you respond to that. And you're going through it right now, in a way.
Yeah. I mean, like my response in 2008 was much worse. Like just in my leadership, the way I carried myself, the way I got down and I didn't elevate, and I didn't use the down to create opportunity. I used it as like just survive, right? Like I was floating on a board from the Titanic, and all I wanted to do was survive instead of turn multiple boards into a boat. Like and now I just learn from that experience and say, what would I do differently? And now in this market, I get the opportunity. I'm lucky enough to get the opportunity to lead people in a down market. And what are the lessons that I can now come in and like my energy has never been higher. My positivity has never been more sincere. And it's not fake, meaning I'm not sitting here going, oh, no, transaction volume's okay. Don't worry about it. Like, look over here. Here's the smoke. It's over here. No, this is real. This is saying, hey, transaction volume sucks. We're going to address the issue. But let me tell you why what we're doing is really positive.
What we're going to do about it.
Exactly.
We're aware, but let's focus on the solution. And you've been here. You're like, I felt this pain. I've been through this storm. I've experienced this, but this is how we get out of it.
Well, yes, absolutely. I think I'm talking to people like, I understand what you guys are going through. I want you to understand what I've been through so I can help us all get out of it. And here's what I'm going to do as a result is that you're going to be nervous. You're going to be scared throughout this whole process. I can't change that. The only thing that I can do is be really transparent with how I'm seeing the market. What is the market, how I'm seeing it, and then what we're going to do about it. And then this is collective. This is where communication needs to go up. Is that camaraderie needs to go up, celebrating successes needs to be increased because we need to find the positive in what we're doing. There's a lot of ways in which we can handle this, and sitting here feeling sorry for ourselves, that's not going to be one of them. I was in a meeting today and I started the meeting with like, hey, I want to ask a bunch of questions and I want to understand things. But if at any moment this starts to turn into a bitch fest, we're going to have to divert back to what the core, like the reason that I'm here. Yeah. And it's to understand. It's not to, to sit here and tell me everything that's bad about, what's going on. So yeah, I think those experiences, like again, when I was 20 or 22, I'm not handling things as I would as an older, more experienced person. But a lot of that is because I was head down and I wasn't learning. I was just do whatever came natural. And so I get the unique experience to look back and say, okay, now in new markets, how am I going to handle this differently?
Yeah, that's so good. Outside of the down market and transactions being down, you went through that in 08 now and many miniature versions of that over time. What is one of the other biggest struggles you've ever faced or adversity in your journey of entrepreneurship?
I don't really talk about this much, but I will, just because I think it's so unique, and it was something that we just kind of talked about from the standpoint of it was my darkest moment. And in 2016, I had a brain tumor. I went through a divorce. I was married. My dad died. And those were just three things that all hit within a couple of months. I guess looking back, I was like, that was one of my moments, was dealing with all of those things. My life was turned upside down. Didn't know if I was going to live. Someone that I was deeply, deeply close with had passed. And lastly, I got hit with an IRS audit. I'd never been audited, and knock on wood, will never be audited again. And all of those things. So it was 4. Usually they come in 3s. Well, I'm lucky enough. My favorite number is 4. I don't know why they came in 4. Well, there you go. But
it's a lot.
It was heavy, and it was, I had moved out of my house with my now ex-wife and moved into this place really quickly, just in a whim, like, okay, I'm just going to be temporary. And it was such a dark place. So I was in a dark, new place that felt so stale, and all of these bad things around me were so bad and so heavy. And it was just literally one day, wake up, just keep fighting, just get up and fight. Like, you will get through this. I think it's just that mentality of understanding, like, these things you're getting hit with a lot of things right now. Your life has been really good. It's not that moment right now, and how you respond and react in a moment where you're scared, you're hurt, you're disappointed, you don't know what to do. I think that was the moment for me where it was just one day at a time, and getting through that, it builds your confidence, your character, and your ability to handle really bad shit.
Yeah.
And where you feel invincible when you get through it. And you're like, damn, that is a shield of armor and protection of like, I'm stronger now. I put 3 plates on, like I did it. Like most people couldn't do one of those things in a year. I did 4 of them in 3 months. And it was really powerful and impactful in my life. And I was leaning on a lot of different, self things, like higher power. I was leaning, like just trying to figure out like so many things for myself in a short amount of time that I can look back on that moment and say that was no doubt those few months were life-changing.
Man, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing. First of all, I think in the journey of being a leader, there are macro level chaos that can come into our life that's kind of outside of our control. Man, a brain tumor. So you're going thoughts of, am I going to die?
Yeah.
Is it all over right now? A divorce. I mean, that right there takes most men out in business. Just that. Heartbreak and all of that comes with that. That's a lot. Losing your dad, sounds like you were close with him. That's tough. And then being audited, man, that would make someone shit their pants real quick.
Well, it was funny because the 3 before happened, and then the audit was like right when my dad was about to die.
Oh, wow.
And he was just, you could tell it wasn't going well, and you didn't know how much time. I was in the Bay Area, and I had this meeting that was set up with the auditor, and I fly down. My level of give a fuck about an audit for this meeting was 0. So I walk into the audit, I sit down, I go, I don't care what you do to me, because nothing that you do to me from an audit standpoint is going to be worse than what I'm dealing with in my life. I'm going to give you 2 hours, and then I'm going to get my happy ass back on a plane and go try to spend the next however long I have with someone that's really important to me. So good luck. Let me know what you need. You have 2 hours. Like, time starts right now. He was sitting there and he was like, holy shit, this guy is like no joke. Like I wasn't laughing. I wasn't trying to be snarky. I was like, my father's dying. I flew down here for this meeting. It's important, but it's not nearly as important as me getting out of here and going and spending the last however long with my father. So you have 2 hours. Let's nail this.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was funny, and I didn't have anything to hide, but it, those things are like, you got to go through everything. They look at everything.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going back and seeing my dad, and I didn't know how long. At this point, he couldn't really talk. And I tell him the story, and I said, Dad, you'd be really proud of what I just did today. And he couldn't talk, but he opened his eyes, and I could tell he knew exactly what I was saying. So it was kind of cool. He was like, yeah, fuck the IRS. Fuck the auditor. Like, yeah, thank you. Like, so I took a bat and tried to at least tell him a story where, and because he was honestly not even moving. So the fact that he kind of blinked and opened his eyes was kind of a big deal for me. And I felt good being able to tell him a shitty story, and him like hearing it for, maybe one of the last times.
Wow. Yeah. My coach that I work with taught me, he calls it stay in the game protocol. How like in life, there's going to be risks that come in chaos that you can't do anything about that. Your dad dying, there's nothing you could have done to change that scenario.
Yeah.
So all you have to have is stay in the game protocol, because the number one risk factor I believe that we have, and you especially have too, is self-sabotage. And number one, the only thing that could take you out of this game is you, dude. And like when you're going through everything you went through, self-sabotage is right there knocking at your door. Like Satan's there wanting you to fall into every possible sin, every possible pity party, depression, everything. Like darkness is at the door.
Right.
And if you give it an inch, it'll take a foot. You get a foot, it'll take a yard. And then that self-sabotage, from what I've seen in this space, I just observe. I pay a lot of attention to a lot of things, and I watch people, and I'm like, you did something amazing, but the moment chaos came, self-sabotage took you out of the game.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the chaos. It was how you responded to the chaos. Chaos happens to us all in different forms, in different ways.
Sure, yeah.
How have you been able, and we're about to wrap up, be resilient through all of this chaos in your life, every storm you've had to weather, everything you've gone through, and you hit a little bit on it, but what advice could you give me? Give me advice. What advice you give me to stay in the game?
For me personally, one of the things that I do is I have the awareness to know when I'm going through the thick of it, and I flip a switch. I literally will tell myself, you are now going through the thick of it. This is your opportunity to handle it a certain way. Like, it is so easy when it's easy. This is now, like, it's almost like a challenge put in front of you where if you flip it on and you're like, all right, it's go time. Now I gotta compete with everything around me. I've got to focus more. I've got to dig in a little bit harder. I've got to be aware and alert. Like, this is no time to start taking dinner parties. This is no time to allow nonsense into my life. It's like, no, we're going to compete right now with myself, with the the chaos that's in front of me. And what I do right now, meaning day 1, day 2, every day you're waking up going, all right, another day, build small momentum, get through it, just little by little, get through it. And it's that little acknowledgement of like, this is it. This is one of those times. And it can't be, you can't do it all the time or else you're kind of flipping lights on and off. But when you decide like, this is a chaotic moment or this is a really tough moment, and you tell yourself like, this is my moment to do something different, to get out of this. It's little by little, it's day by day, and it's acknowledging like, you got to be your best. You've got to be really self-aware. You've got to be really strong. You've got to be really energetic in a moment where everything is going to tell you, no, I'm tired. I want to go drink. I want to do drugs. I want to go party. I want to just numb the pain. No. You lean into the pain. You wake up earlier. You exercise harder. You eat healthier. Like, this is no time for nonsense. As you dig into it, you lean into it and you fight, right? You don't run. You don't bury your head in the sand. You don't say, hey, I don't want to know any of the shit that's going. No, I want to know everything. I got to know if I'm going to address all of this and get out of it, if I have to go a little bit deeper into the bad, that's the only way I'm going to get back out to the good in the shortest amount of time. So that's kind of what I've always done. And it sucks. It really does. It's not pleasant to go through some of that stuff, the heartbreak, the financial scare, the loss of life, like that. None of those things. I'm not going to sit here and tell you those things are good. I'm certainly not sitting here telling you my way is perfect. I'm just telling you that's, for me, the way that I've been able to kind of strategically, methodically compartmentalize and just get through it.
That's so good. Thank you for that. It resonates too. And I think man was designed by God with a certain capacity that woman doesn't have. I do believe that men are warriors and that we actually have an ability to compartmentalize all of those things we have to deal with to go out and keep fighting. Like, we're designed that way. There's a reason our bones are bigger. We're stronger. We have more muscle mass. But even on a emotional, physiological scale, I think men have a higher capacity. Doesn't mean most men do what you just said. Very small percentage of men do that. Yeah. Because we live in a world,
that's a whole new podcast we could go down.
We could go down and spend a whole time talking about that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. No, but I agree with you 100%. Yes.
That's good, man. Well, hey, Casey, you have a podcast, and I want my viewers to be able to go check out your podcast. I mean, you are doing such amazing things. Can you tell us what your podcast is?
Yeah, so we actually changed the name of it. It was Fuck You Friday, and we moved it to Flip Your Friday just because of PR directors, et cetera. But we have a good time with it. It's centered around, when I moved to San Diego, no one in San Diego was working on Fridays. And so I had this experience as a college football player about, we're going to grind on Fridays. It's the only way we're going to be good, is that Friday is our day to separate. And so when I first came down here, one of the reasons I tell people I was able to be successful in a short amount of time was because I would start really early on Fridays and I'd end really late. And it was the only difference in what I was doing versus a lot of other people. And I still, to this day, I tell people, if you're in San Diego and you're working, I don't care what you're doing, get in early on a Friday and stay until 8 o'clock and do whatever you do really, really well on Fridays. You will be different than 40% of the people just right off the bat.
Wow. Man, that's so good. And then social media, where can they connect with you on there?
Yeah, we're Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. I don't know, my social media guys. TikTok. He's yelling at me, TikTok.
Like, TikTok.
You know what's funny is I didn't know I had a TikTok. My mom calls me one day and she's like, oh my God, she's like, I love your TikTok. I'm like, I don't think it's me, Mom. She's like, no, I'm watching a video on you right now.
Good job, guys.
I'm watching you right now. I'm like, huh. So I looked on, I'm like, man, I do look pretty good on this TikTok thing, Mom. Thanks.
Wow.
Yeah, so a big shout out to my my social media guy, Brandon, who's over there filming.
Let's go, Brandon.
My mom is so proud.
Well, I love that, man. Well, Casey, thank you for your time, man. Thank you for the conversation. I know my life was impacted and made better because of it. And I just think like the ability to show up, the ability to say, you're a busy guy. You didn't have to do this. You have a million things you're juggling in your company, your CEO, hundreds of people relying on you. So I want you to know I don't take that lightly. Thank you for your time. And I do believe that lives will be changed because of your yes and your willingness to show up today. So thank you.
I had a blast. This is a great podcast. I've seen you over the last year do a ton of interviews down here, and have always been a big fan. I was honored when you invited me on, and it has exceeded all my expectations. I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. I like talking in general, but it has been nice to have a long, lengthy.
We got that in common.
A long, lengthy conversation with you. So I am humbled and greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, man. All right, last thing you want to say to the audience, and we're getting out of here.
Go do it. Just watch the podcast and then go execute. The world is about discipline and execution. And so if you get two of those things in your life, you will be served in whatever way that looks like for you. So that's success for me.
You heard the man. Get to work.
Get to work, baby.